Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are out on the launch pad today with the glorious return to service of the Shuriken MK6-K. At the flight stick today is veteran pilot and first Kerbal on the moon, Alice Campbell, delaying her retirement to rescue our stranded Kerbals from Kawaii Potato Station. Alongside her are Nina, last name I'm not going to try to pronounce, and Catherine Wagner, who are really only there to satisfy a 3 Kerbal to orbit contract. So our relative inclination with Kawaii Potato Station is 0.03 and climbing, so we need to get this mission underway. SAS is on. Throttle is set to full. Let's get this show on the road. The ignition sequence start. Alright, all engines are spooled. Let's get these clamps off. There we go. Alright, well, we are skyward bound, and going up is a little routine, so long as we can avoid overheating our nose cone tank here. And, yeah, getting to orbit. Easy. Coming back down, not so much, but I think we've got those kinks worked out. Anyway, we have all of North Africa to practice landing on. So I will pick all of you up in orbit. Well, as I mentioned, the launch phase of Shuriken, the Mark 6 especially, is particularly easy. It's just a matter of keeping tabs on that relative inclination, making sure that we can make appropriate rendezvous with Kawaii Potato Station. But the only other, I guess, point is to make sure that you go up high enough before starting the gravity turn. Otherwise, the nose cone of that external fuel tank has a tendency to overheat and explode. But thankfully, I was lax at paying attention and went up way too high, which will result in our apoapsis going a little crazy-ish, but that's much later on. We did throttle back the engines quite significantly coming up here on booster set. Not that we needed to, but I just kind of wanted to preserve the angle and let us drift to catch up with our time to apogee a little bit before returning here to full throttle, ditching the boosters, watching them fall very cleanly away, and then aiming the orbiter and its EFT just straight down the horizon. I typically do not do a belly roll with the Shuriken. I'll leave that to the SKS, which just looks far more majestic while doing it, and also tends to really screw with the relative inclination. I've been, I don't want to say lucky, but it's been a little bit of a wrestling match keeping the relative inclination below 0.1. We've done a pretty good job of it so far, although it does require more concentration than I probably have to give at any given moment. So keeping our apogee a little bit in check. I actually wanted to come into a nice low orbit as Kawaii Potato Station is ahead of us in its orbit, so I thought maybe a 200 by 200 would be a nice goal to shoot for. So naturally I screwed it all up, although a little bit of nose down here did help keep that apogee a little bit in check. My dreams of being able to catch up to the station versus letting it catch up to us were just not in the cards for us today. But we are coming up here very shortly on main engine cutoff, so I guess I'll turn you over to old me for more live-ish style commentary. Yeah, well, 454 by 214. Not the greatest, admittedly. We need to move some fuel around, which of course means that I'm probably going to have to speed this up. This is a very necessary part of operating the Mark 6, is that it carries its bulk supply of aerosine and nitrogen tetroxide in the EFT for balance purposes, so we just have to pump it all into the orbiter before we separate the EFT. Not doing so, well, it sucks. It leaves you about 200 meters per second to get everything done. But today would not be that day. So with that done, I will turn you back over to old me. Alright, that's probably good enough. Let's halt the rotation. Get rid of all of these. Oh, come on. And stage. I'm on the wrong keys. That's why things are being dumb. Waka waka. Alright, make sure our throttle is pinned to 0, and we'll hit our post MECO and toggle OMS. Does that unlock our gimbal? It does not. So let's stage in our gimbal. There it is. And start to plan for rendezvous. So we'll start things off by plotting out a completely useless node. I thought that maybe by raising our periapsis a little bit to be more in line with the station might aid us a little bit, but decided ultimately it was not worth it. We'll jump into time warp before I realize the one major thing that I have forgotten. Before we get too carried away, should probably turn on our fuel cells and things. Should have topped these off beforehand. Activate fuel cell. Alright, back to the warping. So now with the time warping in full effect and with the solar panels extended and our fuel cells operating, we can time warp around until we start to see those intersect nodes come a little closer together, and then we'll start plotting out our node to make rendezvous. Of course, instead of adjusting radial out, we'll just move the node around our orbit until we get to something that starts to look somewhat reasonable. Through node plotting, before they start to skip around, we're able to see a node about 7.5 or so kilometers away. We'll adjust the rest of that on the back of RCS. But while I have you here, and while this is rather mundane and silly, we're going to actually switch over to looking at Venus for a second. This was actually supposed to be its own episode, but the basis of such just turned out to be not substantive enough. So while the Mark 6C down there in the corner is making its burn, and then I will press and hold the H, N, I, J, K, and L keys to make that rendezvous an actual possibility, we're going to take a look here at our supply pods out at Venus. Now, in order for our crewed Venus orbital missions to be successful, we need to dock one of these supply pods with our Venus Orbital Lab, now officially called OSTRICH, which stands for something, but there's like 4 different acronyms I need to decide on which one we're going to go with, but more on that later. So the inclination difference between the 2 in-orbit life support pods and our orbital station OSTRICH is quite significant. It looks like to get either of these supply pods on the same plane as the station itself, we're looking at about 2 kilometers per second of delta V. It just, their ascending, descending nodes and apoapsis or periapsis are just not aligned very well. Or at all, and that's because we really didn't have any data on what telemetry the station would be at orbital insertion. So we were kind of firing blind into the dark. Now, the station itself does have a little more than 2,200 or so meters per second of delta V in its capture stage, which we are going to use to lower it down into its parking orbit. Basically, we've come to the conclusion that both supply pods in orbit are not tangible, and therefore we might have to be pushing back our crew deployment yet another window, because I will not launch a crew to this station until there is a life support pod docked to it. OSTRICH station carries almost no life support of its own, and so sending a crew out here before we can solidify their longevity into the next departure window is absolutely mission critical. Anyway, at the station's next pass through its periapsis, we went ahead and lit our experimental engine and started to lower down that orbit as much as really we could. We do have some reserve fuel in the station, although I was thinking that would be best to keep around for topping off incoming vehicles, as we did not get a fuel resupply pod out here, but the aerosine and nitrogen tetroxide that it does hold will only power the thrusters of Chestnut and won't do it any good as far as getting the vehicle home. But we do still have some runtime left on our ELE, and it will not be decoupled at the end of this burn, so we might choose to circularize that orbit a little better next pass, or whenever the hell we feel like it. So in the meantime, we will be adjusting our plans here at Venus a little differently. This does give us a nice opportunity to make sure that the fuel resupply pods for Chestnut can successfully be deployed and docked to the station, as well as the life support pods that are absolutely mission critical. There's the end of the burn for Ostrich Station, and we are coming up on the zeroing out of relative speed for the Mark 6K there in low Earth orbit. Ostrich Station did take this low pass as an opportunity to run some science experiments. We did get one or two things in there that we'll keep and then move on over to the lab, and just did some small latch ditch effort. I switched over to one of our life support pods, thinking maybe we can just boost up the apoapsis somewhere near an ascending or descending node, and see how well that does for us as far as adjusting that relative inclination down to the station. Since it does have that heat shield, it can lower its orbit for pretty much free, just so long as it's got enough fuel left on board to boost that periapsis back up out of the Venus atmosphere to avoid plummeting itself to a fiery death. But in any case, it looks like just adjusting the apoapsis to be closer to the ascending or descending node is going to cost more fuel than we have on board anyway. Each of those pods has about 700 meters per second or so of delta V, because really this is a carbon copy of all the stuff that we've just been sending to Mars, just with a little more ablator added onto the top to deal with the much harsher conditions during the Aero capture maneuver. Not a whole lot in the ways of delta V. It was really just enough to perform rendezvous and docking. And really, we've had much less trouble getting a pretty good inclination at Harmonia Station. But I think now that we have the station here at Venus, Ostrich Station, in its parking orbit, we can probably target our supply pod approaches a lot more carefully. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for all things out here at Venus. But we should get back to our actual task at hand here, which is, of course, docking. The most exciting part of any shuttle flight is, of course, bringing it in line with the station and getting hard dock. So we did make a rather close approach. Nothing was clipped, no damage was wrought. All of the crew is entirely A-OK, so I don't know. No harm, no foul. We've retracted the solar panels, and we are starting to make our final approach onto our docking hub here at Kauai Potato Station. It's just kind of a waiting game, because you can't really use physics warp, can't really use regular time warp. Things just go all cattywampus on you. But we do have perspective that we can use to gauge our approach. Of course, never been my strongest ability to dock things, but I think the last time I had to dock a Mark 6C out here was noteworthy enough. But thankfully this time it's just Nemo and Dory docked here, and we've got plenty of room to park on one of these long docking extenders, which are kind of built for these shuttle missions. So we'll just try to zero out as much as we can while maintaining our approach. Of course, we are going to need a little bit of roll input to I don't know, bring ourselves in level, but I think we should probably get under it. Of course, I misgauged a little bit. Yep, there's the roll, and then the lateral adjustment to bring that back in line with us. We're only a little bit off at this point, a little bit more nose down and some backing up. And we'll call off a little bit of this approach, coming in a little too fast, and way off target. But all in all, the arrangement of these docking ports makes it fairly easy to actually gauge your approach, because we can just kind of look right down the barrel and see how well our approach is going. Although I know in sped up footage it's a little disorienting, and things tend to happen at a reasonable speed, which is not the half hour or so I spent making this approach to the station. But lucky you for getting to watch this in post after we've done all of these nice changes. But here is our final approach on docking. So of course, I'm pretty off angle, but we have yet to make actual contact. We'll do a whole lot of that later and induce enough roll to make it worthwhile. Hit the brakes, back it up, adjust the roll, adjust the nose down to try to make these docking ports level with one another, and of course throw it back in reverse again before we can finally make our approach, and then hopefully collect our crew, spend a couple of days in orbit so that we can satisfy this 3 Kerbal to low Earth orbit contract and actually make some money on something for a change. There's initial contact. SAS should have been turned off, but I probably wasn't thinking. So a little bit of nose down, a whole lot of paint lost, a little bit of roll. Man, I'm all over the place. It's kind of depressing watching these things in post. But eventually, we'll get lined up enough to where I assume it should be docking. There it is. And there's docked. I mean, eventually. KSP has to catch up with me again. Yeah, okay, it did. I just did not realize it. Hey, cool, we're docked. Yay, that was paint scrapiest. Alright, we're gonna transfer over our necessary fuel supplies and everything, since this is technically a resupply vessel as well as a crew transport, and get all the things sorted out. Then we'll get our crew loaded up, and I guess we'll try for reentry probably next episode. I hope. Anyway, fingers flippin' crossed, although I will warn you, we are not going to aim for a runway this time. We're going to go back to our traditional landing site of North Africa, because it's long and flat and, relatively speaking, easy to hit. I think I only missed it twice. So there's that. Anyway, so that's going to do it for this episode, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it. And I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.